Hello, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are. Welcome to the AML Watchers webinar. I am your host, Mark Bain, the CEO of the KYB, an organisation that uncovers businesses and ultimate beneficial owners across the globe, thus helping in the fight against crime. And today, the topic, a hot topic that it is the prevention of money laundering through law enforcement, financial institutions, and the effective technology that we uncover. So I'd like to say actually that this session looks to be one like no other that AML Watcher has hosted. We're going to be exploring some human aspects of these crimes and the interconnected web of illegal empires and illicit tobacco and scam centres to human trafficking and modern slavery. We'll also discuss how to dismantle these networks by cutting off the funding and emphasis on critical importance of collaboration between these two parties. Now, I can't bring this to life, but my two distinguished guests can for sure. And first up on the stage, we've got Hayley van Loon. Hayley has over 2 decades of experience working in counter-terrorism intelligence and holding key positions in both government and private sectors across the globe, from Australia to Washington, DC. As the CEO and founder of Magnolia Intelligence, Hayley also serves as Deputy CEO of CrimeStop International. And for those that you don't know who that is, you'll get a short surprise in a very minute. More recently, working with Farrahs in Asia Pacific, an advanced technology firm using cutting-edge forensic cyber techniques and whistleblowing and human intelligence. It's clear to say Hayley is deep knowledgeably and I've actually wrote supper, can you believe it? But super passionate about this subject matter. So welcome, Hayley.
Thanks, Rick.
You're on mute. How many times are we going to say mute? If anyone wants a wager on that. And we will talk about, I won't talk about wages because it's super problematic in the UK at the moment with wages and the election, but that's another story. Next up on the stage, and by no one least, is Steve Farrah. For nearly a decade, Steve has been prioritising the fight against human trafficking, leveraging his banking and law enforcement experience, consulting for the United Nations on drugs and crime, and the EU-funded AML Trafficking in Human Beings project across the Middle East, North and East Africa, with a focus on identifying and targeting finances associated with human trafficking. Prior to this, Steve has held pivotal positions in both governmental and private sectors. It's clear to say, again, with a plethora of letters after his name, we're in good company to tackle this subject. So welcome, Steve.
Many thanks, Mark. Great to be here.
Yeah, good. So we might have a little technical thing here, so bear with us. We're going to be pressing a button, or rather, should I say, Hayley is poised to press a button, because to set the scene, we're going to pre-warn you with that this is not designed to offend anyone, but merely inform someone. So when you see this video, please take it on board for what it really is. Hayley, away.
Everyone say that.
I can definitely see it.
Okay.
I made the fake bag. I'm forced to work on a sewing machine for 16 hours a day.
I used the money from selling the fake bags to buy real drugs and real guns and containers full of fake cigarettes.
I fill up the empty containers with sex slaves for return journey.
Was taken from my family and sold. And chained to a bed for 14 hours a day. I just want to go home.
This is the work of the illegal empire, a $4 trillion business made up of gun runners, terrorists, people traffickers, murderers, and victims.
I don't know if we didn't have a sound at the end, but the final words he says is business is booming, which comes us into that subject. And that's hard hitting for many people to see. If you've never seen it before, that's probably an eye-opener for many people. And I think we're going to just have a few anecdotal stories around some of that background to start with, and then we're going to dive into some direct questions that can perhaps give you a little bit more of an insight to where we sit today. So I don't know if either of you want to kick off with a few anecdotal stories, and maybe Hayley, how that came about would be a good thing.
So I think some points I want to make on this illegal, we're calling it the illegal empire campaign, but essentially we want to stop these illegal empires. When we talk about all the different areas that CrimeStop International works across, we discover that all of these criminalities that different sectors are working on are all intertwined through their financial channels. And we really wanted people to understand that when they're purchasing, for example, a fake bag, it's not actually cheap. The cost is high. The cost is high for the victims that are along the trail of that counterfeit product. Just some statistics for you around this illegal empire. So we've got $32 billion in the counterfeit toy market, fake Barbies, fake products. 5.4 billion in counterfeit cosmetics. So cosmetics that are made with, we don't know what's in them, what kind of poisons are going into people's bodies. $230 billion goes to illegal streaming views, $2.4 billion in fake batteries and tires, something people don't ever consider is an actual thing that happens to them. Steve and I were looking at yesterday, counterfeit airbags, that are killing people when they're having car accidents that would have otherwise survived. $6 billion lost due to fake aircraft parts by the US Department of Defense. So they're just some examples of some interesting areas that counterfeit products are impacting the everyday person. And the idea behind this campaign is to really allow people to understand that it is not a distant problem. It's not a problem on the streets of Bali or, Venice, where people are selling counterfeit bags or fake T-shirts or Nike shoes. It is all of us. All of us have an impact on this industry, and there are things we can do to help reduce the victimization of people and reduce harm. When we look at things like the Charlie Hebdo terror attacks, a lot of that was funded by fake counterfeit Nike shoes. So if you've ever bought a counterfeit shoe, a Puma, an Adidas, a Nike, whatever, with probably a Nike or something, or an Adidas, you have probably funded something that has caused harm to somebody else. And so that's the idea behind the campaign and the message we really want to get out there from our perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And breaking that down and seeing that video really comes to life. I mean, as we go through the people that we see, the actual people that we see in that video. And I think that's where Steve comes in towards the latter part of that part, how we identify it. And then of course this subject matter is how we break them off in the purse, in the pocket at the top end. I think that's what we're talking around here. So Steve, I know you've got a couple of anecdotal stories that you want to add in before we dive into some questions about that.
Yeah, look, thanks, Mark. And thanks very much, Hayley. I think very often when we talk about AML, we get very focused on the technicalities of it and how we do it, but we always sort of forget that the victims of how it impacts society, and it really is and all about the money as well. I think what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, Mark, is just share a couple of anecdotal stories about the criminals, because in the video, I think it's a fantastic video, but they appear faceless. But I think that the actual truth is they aren't. They're very much amongst us. And from my banking experience, two things I'd just like to quickly share. One was actually a famous case, a takeover of a UK Premier League football club by a Hong Kong syndicate headed by a former hairdresser from Hong Kong. I won't mention names, but this is a case that's out there in the public domain. But he was the front man that had a lot of organized crime money trying to break in to the Premier League. I think they had in mind buying an Arsenal or a Chelsea or a Man U, but they ended up with, no offense to Birmingham City, but they ended up with Birmingham City. you know,
Sorry
but
to all the
why?
Birmingham City fans.
Yeah. But why would an organized crime syndicate flush with cash want to break into this market? You know, well, there are several good theories. One is, you know, the prestige of owning a Premier League football club. The second one is access to even more money through TV rights, advertising, sponsoring. But I think the personal view is that they were keen on the gambling revenue of being able to bet and tilt matches at the highest level of UK football. So, you know, again, this also gives respectability to the syndicate. So these folks, they were flush with cash. They put the proxy in and they bought a club for £85 million, a lot of money. And the only good thing that the proxy did at his trial for money laundering was actually try to explain badly how he got the money, which was his downfall. But, you know, criminals learn, and we always call jails as the university of crime, because when criminals go into jail, they learn how not to make the same mistakes again. They learn how to get smarter and better. And look, ladies and gents who are listening, this is what we're up against. We're not up against sort of, you know, anonymous groups that are operating in the ether. We're up against people who are walking the same streets, going to the same places we are, but their intent is malicious, is criminal, and there are also, you know, as Hayley's video said, a lot of victims on that side. Now, another quick story as well, which was a recent case, again, in Asia, where I was based for many years. This was a takedown of a very big organized crime group, which is called a junket. Basically, they operate the VIP gambling rooms inside casinos, and they make a lot of money. And finally, the Chinese authorities took out one of the leaders after he'd been identified for many years as making an awful lot of money. Now, this guy was bankrolling films. He was a film producer. He was doing charity events. He was actually diversifying by buying into blue chip companies so we can get onto their boards. He was diversifying into racehorse areas as well. And this is the kind of things that organized crime now, they're not running around with guns and meat cleavers. They are very much in the business arena, in the boardrooms, and trying to make influence there. And so this is what we must recognize when we're sitting at our desks doing our AML work, is that the kind of people we're up against are very smart, well funded, well connected. They do not have all the problems of privacy and sharing information, which we may touch on later on, which restricts banks and it restricts law enforcement from working. But this is how criminals operate. And very sadly, you know, they are fueled very often by huge hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of victims who are, as the video said, making illicit bags or are sex slaves. And it's not just them, folks. It's their families as well, wondering where Mark has gone, where Hayley's gone, where Steve's gone. Why haven't I heard from them? They went off to get this dream job and I've not heard of them. Where are they now? This is what we're facing, the reality. And AML is designed to look at the money, and maybe we'll touch on that a bit further. Mark, I'll get off my pedestal now. Thank you very much.
You've probably answered all the questions I was about to ask you in one, but what I'm going to just ask, I'm poised, because there will be some people going, you know, they might think, well, I'd still buy the bag. Does it really affect me? I think the question here is, we might have just touched on a certain area, but how significant do you believe this really is to the threat of the global financial system? You know, you've pinpointed a couple of areas, but actually, is it systemic? Is it in there and we don't see it? That's my question.
Hayley,
have you got some audio? Sorry if I put you on the spot.
You go,
Hayley,
Steve.
do you want to go first? Oh, okay,
No,
fine. Look, Mark, you know, it is, how significant a threat is it? It is the threat against the world, really. Everything pins around money, to my understanding. You know, whether it's fake goods, whether it's human trafficking, whether it's drug trafficking, arms smuggling, terrorist financing, it all needs that one single factor, which is financing. So, we unfortunately, I think quite often the agenda, though, it has been sort of hijacked a wee bit by governments. Their focus is on corruption, is on tax evasion. It's on these sort of areas because it's revenue back to the state. But actually, the real problem isn't there. I mean, that's part of it. But I think the bigger problem is all these other crimes all hang their hat off of finance. And that's why the AML CFT system, its intent right at the beginning was to help banks and other financial players look at and report suspicious activity. It wasn't to build an audit compliance industry. It was really the intent was to help find suspicious activity around this finance, because it is right at the heart of all of these activities, as the video highlighted.
Yeah, and I think, Hayley, just to bring you in here, I think one of the things you spoke to me earlier about was purely about some of these platforms, and I'm not going to name platforms, but some of these platforms where maybe my wife might buy something on it because it looks really cheap, and suddenly she gets this thing come through. Now, obviously, it's a challenge to tracing those things, but I know you've got some stories around some of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is really bringing it out of the area of real expertise and the micro kind of discussions around financial crime and bringing it back into that reality. And yes, those platforms we talk about that keep coming up as when you type in a Google search, you're looking for something, new suit or conference, and the top hits are always these particular platforms. Now, obviously, there are issues associated with those platforms to do with counterintelligence issues and things like that. But the other aspect of it is, how are products like that being made? And the sellers on those platforms, because there's such low amounts of money, but in vast quantities going through there, it's an easy way to launder and hide money that you're trying to push through these systems. So when someone says, oh, I've never had a problem with such and such platform, they've never stole my credit card details, it's very, very short-sighted around how your choices are impacting victims and our financial systems. So you are allowing people to launder money through those systems. You are allowing people to run sweatshops through those systems. And yeah, wow, you look great because you saved, $300 and, spent $20 on a three-piece suit. But it's not a win. And I don't think it's something to brag about at all. And I really think that there needs to be a bigger push socially to stop using those kinds of platforms. There used to be, big social movements around using ethically sourced things, and that's kind of died down a bit. But it's on the same vein. We're now seeing not only, wildlife and issues like that. We are seeing this directly impact real people, humans that you saw the young girl in the video, and she says she's chained to a bed. The other one says she's chained to a sewing machine. And this is not just optics, like for funsies. This is real. This is happening to real people. And so I think we need to all stop and think, especially the main purchasers in the house are usually the women, and we're mothers, and we have to think, imagine if that was my child who was pulled out of school and was forced to make this, I don't know, suit or t-shirt or jacket because some person didn't want to spend an extra $100 on something that was made without slave labor, without a trafficked person, without going through those models of laundering with little bits of money at high volume through these stores. That's what we're seeing. And I think people do not understand that is the issue. It's not just they're going to steal my credit card details or they're a state actor that's going to gain access to my computer. Well, that doesn't affect me. Well, I'm sorry, it does. And you are contributing to the harm of vulnerable people.
Yeah. I mean, there's big campaigns in many Western countries about the provenance of what you put in your mouth. And where was that beef raised, or where was that grown, or was it organic? But not so much about what you put on your feet or what you put on your back. Now, perhaps that's where it starts. There have been some campaigns around fashion and sweatshops, but I think what we're uncovering is a bit more deeper level than this, because it's actually who owns that sweatshop. What does that facilitate? Where does that actually come? Where does that end up? Why was it there in the first place, and who's funding it and who's doing that? I think that's where we're going. There is an education piece out there to the wider audience for sure. But I think that the other part I want to jump right into now is really about the collaboration between law enforcement and financial institutions, because we can talk about the finer detail, but we can't often. What happens is the guy in Venice, as you mentioned, he's selling the bags. Now he's probably completely got no money. He's an illegal immigrant. He's desperate. You've got to feel sorry for him. But what happens is the police target him. Now what we're talking about now is going up the chain and targeting the top of that level. So really, what the importance of between law enforcement and financial institutions. Maybe you can add a bit of context to this, Steve.
Sure, but I echo what Hayley was saying there about. I think there is a broader message out to a broader audience about we all need to play a role. I mean, as you said, Mark, at the end of the video, business is booming, and unfortunately, all the numbers I see across the different crime types that would evidence that business is booming. And it seems to be gaining momentum. There doesn't seem to be any stop in any type of crime, or it's been reduction, even though there are sort of wins. But this is where I think there needs to be a new paradigm, a new narrative about how we work together between the folks on this call, who I presume mostly are business professionals in financial institutions, and law enforcement. Often they're at polar ends. They have different mandates, they have different responsibilities. I've been privileged in my career to work in both, so I sort of do understand the issues that both face. And also just to add there, the role that Crime Stoppers plays as a voluntary organization, and perhaps Hayley will speak to this, is vital in this information flow. But very often law enforcement, they have the responsibility and the powers to make arrests, to prosecute, to investigate. But when it comes to financial aspects, often I think most police officers, this is not their sweet spot. This is something that they won't go for. They think it's too hard, it's too difficult. But this is where financial institutions, this is their sweet spot, tracking money, which they do all the time to understand their clients, their customers' behavior. And they look at that for marketing purposes. They look at it for other purposes, not just compliance, but they have the capabilities there and can do it. And the AML framework is really designed to help them to look for key things, key crimes, key types of crimes, and report that back. Now, the system, it's not perfect. But it is vital. It is absolutely vital, Mark, that we have this understanding of what each role is. That law enforcement, if they're given good intelligence, they will go and do their job. That's what people get up for in law enforcement. They put on the uniform and they go out there and take risks because they've been given good intelligence to go and take down a criminal syndicate. There has been one very good project out of a number that I'll just mention. One was in Canada, actually. It was on human trafficking, called Project Protect. This is where actually a victim from human trafficking went to a banking conference and explained to banks how she was trafficked. And the bank said, well, actually, we can see this. This is the kind of things we can see where you've been taking taxis, you've been taking transport, you've been booking accommodation, but you haven't been spending anything on yourself except buying sort of medicinal things and sex-related materials. And they started to look through and could see not just what her profile looked like, but they could see other profiles that looked similar across their client portfolio. And these all matched up, and they reported these under a code called Project Protect. Now, this then went through to the Financial Intelligence Unit, who prioritized this and distilled it down into really good intelligence, which went out to law enforcement, and they leapt on it and then started to make raids all across Canada. And I heard back anecdotally that the criminals who were being arrested were going, well, how did you find me? And of course, thankfully, the law enforcement didn't say, oh, it came from the banks. They said, oh, your mate down the road turned you in. So that's always good to get crims fighting each other. But so the system can work, is what I'm saying, and it can work in all types of crimes, as the Canadians have found, they now use the same sort of style of model for other types of crime types. So, you know, this partnership between law enforcement and financial sector can be vital. It can be so powerful. And just to add to that, you know, two quick things that have changed quite recently, and Hayley and I were in Singapore recently and saw this evidence, was that in Singapore, they have now a scam center where they have the police and actually have banking representatives right there in their scam center, so they can proactively take action against things that are, you know, real time. And that's what we need, Mark. That's what we need going forward. So hopefully it's a model for the rest of the world, but hopefully for all different types of crime. I'll stop here because I see we only have a short time left, and
we do only have
a lot of air.
It's a short event, this one, but we could probably talk about it all afternoon for sure, or all morning, wherever you are. What I was going to add in there that really is around the technology. What I'm hearing you saying here, some kind of transactional monitoring, but honed into those parts. You know, that there's lots of moving parts here from a technology point of view. Have you come across any technologies, particularly in that space, that have been vital in this, or has it been a general? I don't know, Hayley, whether you've come into this. Yeah.
I'll look quickly. There are tons of excellent, innovative technologies out there. I've yet to see a silver bullet that you can press a button and it sorts out your life's problems. But hey ho, we never, you know. But you know, the emergence of different types of AI coming in there to do the heavy lifting for teams, you know, name matching, looking for patterns. I think all of this is good, but I think maybe I'm old school, but I still think the role of an experienced human analyst is vital in teaching the systems of how to move it forward. So I think there's always going to be a need for hybrid systems of the human intelligence with the artificial as well. But I'll pause there because I've said it a lot, but happy to take it up.
I think I'd add to some of the stuff that Steve said in relation to the collaboration obviously is key. And what we did see with the anti-scam centers in Singapore and Hong Kong is that they're very effectively cutting off these financial criminals right at the top. And Steve and I were like, well, can we not see this in human trafficking? Can we not apply the same kind of passion from, you know, these anti-scam kind of concepts to human trafficking, wildlife trafficking? So what do we need to do to achieve that? And that's get buy-in from the private sector in order to achieve the same outcomes. So people feel, you know, scams reach into your mobile phone and get you at home very easily. These other issues are not, you know, infiltrating your home in the same kind of way. So people don't feel as compelled. People will call their banks continuously. So banks feel compelled to do something about scams. So how do we reach that same level? And what we're seeing across the globe is a reduction of staffing for police and first responders. So we can't expect them to continue following up all these issues in a silo. So we do need, you talk about technology, we do need companies to come forward and offer you know, solutions to law enforcement that are not going to cost, you know, heaven and earth. We do need to see that collaboration where they're willing to form, you know, off the models of joint counterterrorism teams, where you have people from the different jurisdictions and the different capabilities coming together to fight these, you know, issues. We're just seeing, like Steve has said, the numbers are rising, they're not going down. And so the only thing we can do is collaborate, support law enforcement as much as we can. CrimeStop is international. Obviously, you can report anonymously to us. So that enables people that are stuck inside organised crime gangs and things that may want to get out an ability to report in certain ways so that they won't be, you know, uncovered if they need to. People who suspect something and they don't know who to call. Local Crime Stoppers program, but Crime Stoppers International obviously allows us to cross those borders, which the majority of these you know, organised crime gangs and money launderers and things are going across those borders. So that's where the international not-for-profits as well need to come into this and take a leadership role and say, look, we can disseminate this information to all of these law enforcement agencies globally and allow them to share patterns. So we're not relying on individual collaborations between this place and that place, or this one bank and this one police force. These are global problems. So allow us to disseminate intelligence across law enforcement globally.
Absolutely. the only major problems or the major advantages that any bad actor has in their armory is that cross-border doesn't mean anything to them. Investment means very little because they can invest and run because they haven't got any regulations to follow. And I suppose this is a kind of a probing question, but it's not on one of our prepared questions, but I've just kind of got to it here, Hayley, and it's really around someone. I'm thinking about practicality now. Someone actually understands something's going on in a particular house in the world somewhere, and they get some fear, and they report that to you. What factor how do they feel comfortable that actually something's going to be done when it goes cross border? That I suppose is a practical question to you.
Yeah. I mean, you can never be sure about how somebody's going to action intelligence you provide, right? So that is a problem in itself. I think what CrimeStop International in our entity provides is genuine anonymity. So we've been taken to court a number of times to try and reveal the identity of people that have provided information to us, and we've never been beaten. So that means that when they provide that information, they know that they will be truly kept anonymous. It's truly anonymous. We don't know. I don't know who those people are. And so whilst I can't guarantee what will happen with the intelligence, because we are a conduit through those police forces, and obviously they have priorities and different, operations that are going on. So as any investigator would know, one may impact another, which means you can't take action on one particular one because you're running a long game to find a larger, set of criminals to arrest, and arresting this one person is going to damage that operation or whatever it might be. So there is no guarantee that there will be an exact execution of anything on a piece of intelligence provided to us, but your anonymity is guaranteed.
Fantastic. We're coming to the end of it. We've got 3 minutes for last final words, just from a closing point. I suppose both of you would give me a kind of a statement to say, that the video was really impactful as far as I'm concerned. When I first saw it yesterday, I've been sharing it around with everybody that I know, and I would welcome everyone on this call to do exactly the same, and that's how we get to the bottom of it. But if you've got some closing statements on how how we can fight this crime, from identifying the bag to the man or the woman that sits on the C-suite in a corporate, any words that you want to add of wisdom that you've come in your knowledge. Steve, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, look, very quickly, I think, as the title of this is all about collaboration. I think, we all need to step up a gear and to really look at how best we can collaborate. Let's not look at the boundaries that stop us from collaborating. Let's see how we can make things better. And that's whether between institutions and law enforcement or other government agencies. This needs to happen. Otherwise, what legacy do we hand to the next generation that we couldn't figure it out? Not a good legacy. I think now is the time to act, and I hope in some small way today's discussion has helped that. But I think what Crime Stoppers is doing in that video, I think, can help get people's minds on really what can we do better. Thank you.
Yeah. And Hayley?
I have nothing to add on top of what Steve has just said. Please share the video. It doesn't make us money. There's nothing associated with that. It is literally a public campaign to help people understand what is going on. So share it. If you'd like to talk to us more about it, feel free to reach out, and keep up the good work, everyone, with you.
Yeah. So I think bringing this message to the masses is what we're talking around. I love to use the words, if my mum can understand it, then everyone can understand it. Sorry, Mum. That's where it is. So great. Thank you very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. And hopefully, if anyone wants to reach out, they know the Crime Stoppers International.